addition that increases the value of real property. Potential gross income. The total annual income a property would produce with 100% occupancy and no collection or vacancy losses. Broker. An individual or business entity licensed by the DBPR to perform services of real estate for others for compensation. Mutual recognition agreement. A transactional agreement between Florida and another state that provides for the two states to recognize each other's real estate license education. Unities. Individual prerequisites required to constitute a single joint tenancy, also called the four unities. Gross rent multiplier. A rule of thumb for estimating the market value of income-producing residential property, the ratio to convert rental income into market value. Legal description. A series of boundary lines on the Earth's surface. Target market. A specific group of prospects chosen because of its demographic, financial, and lifestyle characteristics. Setback. Restrictions established by zoning or deed on the space required between lot lines and building lines. Litigation. A lawsuit, the act of carrying on a lawsuit, a case before a court of law. Lifetime cap. Limits the total amount the interest rate may increase over the life of an adjustable rate mortgage loan. Like-kind exchange. An exchange of real property held for investment for another property held for investment that qualifies for deferment of tax from gain on the sale. Interest. The price paid for the use of borrowed money. Estate. Exempt properties. Properties that have been decreed to be excluded from taxation or claimed by others. Lineal. Descended in a direct family line relating to or derived from ancestors. Underwriting. The analysis of the extent of risk assumed by a lender in connection with a proposed mortgage loan, also called loan qualification or risk analysis. Partial release clause. Stipulates the conditions under which the mortgagee will grant freeing building lots from a mortgage lien upon payment of a certain amount of money. Mortgage discount point. A charge of 1% of the mortgage value assessment by a lender to increase the interest yield to compete with the interest yield from other types of investments. See also discount point. Opinion of title. A formal statement by an attorney regarding the status of a title after examination of the chain of title. Right to use. A leasehold interest in a timeshare unit based on the limited time specified in the agreement. Vacancy rate. The percentage of rental units that are not occupied. Implied contract. An agreement wherein the terms are not stated but are inferred from the conduct of the parties. Real estate services. Real estate activities involving compensation for performing the activities for another. Land development loan. Financing instrument for the installation of on and off-site improvements to the land, including sewers, streets, and utilities. Reciprocity. The practice of mutual exchanges of privileges. Some states have reciprocal arrangements for recognizing and granting licenses to licensed real estate professionals from other states. Building codes. Government ordinances regulating construction practices and materials. Pro forma statement. An estimate of the economic results of a proposed project, a projected income statement. First mortgage. A mortgage on property that is superior in right to any other mortgage. Transaction broker. A broker who provides limited representation to a buyer, a seller, or both in a real estate transaction but does not represent either in a fiduciary capacity or as a single agent. Optioner. The party who gives an option and receives a consideration. Absentee owner. A property holder who does not reside on the property and who usually relies on a property manager to supervise the investment. Immune properties. Real property that is owned by a unit of government and is not subject to taxation. Antitrust laws. State and federal laws designed to maintain and preserve business competition. Air rights. The freedom to use the open space above a property. Police power. The authority of government to protect the property, life, health, and welfare of its citizens. Appreciation. An increase in value. Eminent domain. The constitutional right given to a unit of government to take private property involuntarily if taken for public use and a fair price is paid to the owner. Residential sale. The sale of improved residential property of 4 or fewer units, the sale of unimproved residential property intended for use as 4 or fewer units, or the sale of agricultural property of 10 or fewer acres. Title closing. The consummation of a real estate transaction when the seller delivers title to the buyer in exchange for payment from the buyer of the purchase price. Title insurance. A policy of insurance that protects the holder from any loss resulting from defects in the title. Replacement cost. The expenditure of constructing a building with current materials and techniques that has the same functional utility as the structure being appraised. Payment cap. Limits the amount the monthly payments of an adjustable rate loan can increase during any adjustment. Real Estate Recovery Fund. A state-regulated account to cover claims of aggrieved parties who have suffered monetary losses from licensees' actions. Lien. A claim on property for payment of some obligation or debt. Certificate of Title Opinion. A document signed by a title examiner stating the judgment that, based on an examination of the public records, the seller has good title to the property being conveyed to the buyer, also called an opinion of title. Valid contract. An agreement binding on both parties and legally enforceable against all parties to the agreement. Easement by prescription. A right acquired by an adverse user to use the land of another, created through a court of law after long and uninterrupted use. Accretion. Gradual addition of land caused by natural forces such as wind, tide, flood, or water course deposits. Division of administrative hearings. The governmental entity that hears all formal hearings resulting from an administrative complaint against a licensee. Proprietary lease. A written agreement between the owner corporation and the tenant stockholder in a cooperative apartment. Judgment. Decree of a court that not only declares that one party owes another party a debt but also fixes the debt amount. Buffer zone. A strip of land separating one land use from another. Good faith doubt. A broker's uncertainty as to which party should receive the escrowed property. Estate by the entireties. A tenancy created by husband and wife jointly owning real property with instant and complete right of survivorship. Baseline. Imaginary lines running east and west and crossing a principal meridian at a definite point, used by surveyors for reference in locating and describing land under the government survey system. Escrow. An in-pound account required by most lenders that require borrowers to pay in advance monthly installments for property taxes and hazard insurance. The monthly escrow payment is 1/12 of the estimated. Ready, willing, and able. Ready indicates the buyer is in a position and of a mind to complete the transaction. Willing implies that the buyer desires to do so at the price and terms agreed. Able refers to the buyer's financial ability to produce the required money when necessary. Trust funds. Cash, checks, money orders, and items that can be converted into cash, such as deeds and personal property that a person holds in trust for another person. General warranty deed. An instrument of conveyance containing the strongest and most comprehensive promises of further assurance possible for a grantor to convey to a grantee. Principle of substitution. An economic law of value. No prudent buyer will pay more for a property than the cost of an equally desirable replacement property. Quasi-legislative. Powers delegated to the FREC to enact rules and regulations, decide questions of practice, and validate records. No brokerage relationship. The broker doesn't represent the customer. See also non-representation. Non-conventional loan. A mortgage loan that is insured or guaranteed by the federal government. Voluntary relinquishment for permanent revocation. A licensee respondent may choose to avoid a disciplinary hearing and relinquish the real estate license in lieu of discipline, permanently revoking the license. Situs. Relationships and influences created by location of a property that affect value. immediately. The time period during which a broker must deposit escrow funds no later than the end of the third business day after the broker's sales associate or an employee has received the funds. Disintermediation. A disengagement process when depositors withdraw money from savings for direct investment in stocks, money market funds, and other securities. Statute of limitations. An act that prescribes specific time restrictions for enforcement of rights by action of law. Nolo contender, no contest. A pleading of no contest by a defendant, a plea in a criminal action not admitting guilt but subjecting the defendant to punishment as though it were a guilty plea. Liquidation analysis. An appraiser's methodology and estimate of the value of a business that is being liquidated, an assessment of such factors as the ability of the firm to pay off short-term obligations, the value of the inventory on hand, and the liquidation value of preferred stock. Ministerial duties. The duties of the division of real estate that involve record keeping. Offeree. One who receives an offer, usually the seller. Taxable value. The assessed value less allowable exemptions resulting in an amount to which the tax rate is applied to determine property taxes due. Estate. Tenancy, the interest one holds in real property, the total of one's property and possessions. Mortgage. A written agreement that pledges property as security for payment of a debt. Arbitration. The act of having a third party render a binding decision in a dispute between two parties. Will. A written document legally executed by which an individual disposes of an estate effective after death. Short sale. A sale of secured real property that produces less money than is owed the lender. The lender releases its mortgage so that the property can be sold free and clear to the new purchaser. Florida resident. For application and licensing purposes, a person who has resided in Florida continuously for 4 calendar months or more within the preceding year. Buyer brokerage agreement. An employment contract with a purchaser. Administrative law judge. An attorney employed by the Division of Administrative Hearings, Department of Administration, to hear complaints and issue recommended orders. Home equity loan. A mortgage secured by a personal residence. It provides a line of credit available for draws when needed by the homeowner. It is sometimes used as a home improvement loan. Blanket mortgage. One debt instrument covering two or more parcels. Owner's policy. Title insurance issued for the total purchase price of the property to protect the new owner against unexpected risks. Occupancy rate. The percentage of occupied rental units. Civil Rights Act of 1866. A federal act that prohibits any type of discrimination based on race in any real estate transaction without exception. Attachment. A legal writ obtained to prevent removal of property that is expected to be used to satisfy judgment. Trustee. A person or party either appointed or required by law to administer or manage another's property, also called an escrow agent. Liquidated damages. The amount of valuable consideration specified in an agreement as a penalty for default. See also damages. Seal. A mark, emblem, or impression on a document used to authenticate the document or a signature. Liener. One who has a claim or charge on the property of another. General partnership. An association of two or more persons for the purpose of jointly conducting a business, each being responsible for all the debts incurred in the conducting of that business. Secure and fair enforcement of Mortgage Licensing Act. The SAFE Act sets a minimum standard for licensing and registering mortgage loan originators. Majority. A person having attained 18 years of age or having married or by court order no longer a minor, a number greater than half the total. Stay. Delay temporarily, stop for a limited time. Insurance clause. A provision in a mortgage that requires the mortgagor to obtain and keep current a hazard insurance policy. Intestate. Without a will. Upfront mortgage insurance premium. A one-time mortgage insurance premium on FHA mortgage loans that is paid at closing. Marital assets. Real and personal property acquired during marriage. Marketable title. Rights to real property that are so clear that a buyer may have peaceful and quiet enjoyment of the property free of litigation, also called merchantable title. Appraisal. The process of developing and communicating an opinion of a property's value based on supportable evidence and approved methods as of a certain date. Lot and block. A type of legal description of land. An enforceable contract. A contract that was valid when made but either cannot be proved or will not be upheld by a court. Free and clear. Title to real property that is absolute and unencumbered. Pity. Principal, interest, taxes, and insurance payment on a mortgage loan. Land. The surface of the earth and everything attached to it by nature. Designated sales associates. Two real estate licensees designated to represent the buyer and the seller as single agents in a non-residential transaction. The buyer and the seller must have assets of $1 million or more and sign disclosures stating that their assets meet the required threshold. Annual debt service. The amount of money required each year for the payment of all mortgage interest and principal. Variable lease. An agreement for the tenant to pay specified rent increases based on a predetermined index at set future dates. Tenants in common. A form of ownership by two or more persons each having an equal or unequal interest and passing the interest to heirs, not to surviving tenants. Ground lease. An agreement for the tenant to lease the land only and erect a building on the land. Earnest money. A type of money that a broker may handle for others in the ordinary course of business, also called a good faith deposit or binder deposit. Discount rate. The amount of interest the Federal Reserve charges to lend money to its eligible banks. Formal hearing. A session in which testimony and arguments are presented, especially before an official. Citation. Statements of alleged violations and the penalties to be imposed. Meeting of the minds. The point when two people thinking of the same thing reach an agreement through an offer and acceptance. Economic life. The period of time a property may be expected to be profitable or productive, useful life. Loan estimate. A disclosure form with good faith estimates of credit costs and transactions terms that must be given to the borrower no later than the third business day after receiving the loan application. Open market operations. Purchase and sale of U.S. Treasury and federal agency securities. Cease to be in force. A licensee cannot perform real estate services because certain events occur, such as when a broker changes business address. Statutory redemption period. In some states, the period of time after a judicial foreclosure proceeding during which a person has the right to redeem a property lost in a judicial foreclosure. Income statement. A summary of all income and expenses of a business for a stated period of time. Market value. The most probable price a property will bring from a fully informed buyer willing but not compelled to buy, and the lowest price a fully informed seller will accept if not compelled to sell. Interpleader. A course of action when two contesting parties cannot reach an arbitrated agreement, a legal proceeding whereby the broker, having no financial interest in the disputed funds, deposits with the court the disputed escrow deposit so that the court can determine who is the rightful claimant. Basis. The initial cost of an investor's property. Due on sale clause. A provision in a conventional mortgage that entitles the lender to require the entire loan balance to be paid in full if the property is sold. Sale contract. An agreement whereby one party agrees to sell and the other party agrees to buy according to the terms set forth, also called a deposit receipt contract, purchase agreement, or contract for sale and purchase. Fair Housing Act. Gross lease. An agreement for the tenant to pay fixed rent with the landlord paying all the expenses associated with the property. Voluntary receipt of an item offered by another. Encumbrance clause. A provision in a deed to real property warranting that no liens, claims, or liabilities exist on the property being conveyed, except as specified. Ratio. The relationship in quantity, size, or amount between two things. Proportion. Witness. A person who gives testimony, one who observes and attests to the signing or executing of a document. Tenancy at sufferance. An estate lawfully acquired for a temporary period of time but retained after a period of lawful possession has expired, non-freehold estate. Grantee. Party who receives a deed or grant, buyer. Receivership clause. A provision in a mortgage related to income-producing property that is designed to require that income derived be used to make mortgage payments in the event the mortgagor defaults. Liabilities. Debts, financial obligations, drawbacks. Probable cause. Reasonable grounds or justification for prosecuting. Certificate of occupancy. An occupancy permit issued by the local government after construction is completed and the final inspection is approved. Fixture. An object that was once considered personal property but has become real property because of attachment to or use in improvements to real property.